So again, this is the Creative Confidence series, and Sina and I are going to be chatting about design thinking. I'm going to give you a little bit of intro. Again, if you're just joining us, please join the chat so you can enter any questions. Here's the format. Sina and I will give some intros, why we're passionate about this topic and why we love to teach it. And then we're going to spend about 15 minutes doing some Q&A on thank you for many of you have sent in your questions in advance.
That's right.
So we have a few pre-selected questions that we'll go through. And then what I love is the last 15 minutes is open Q&A with all of you. So you can already start sending in some of your questions around design thinking. And if you're just joining, I'd love for you to say hello, where are you calling from or dialing in from? Hi, Cecilia, Redwood City, really close to my town. Marion from Nairobi, Kenya. Kelly from Minneapolis, that's where I'm from.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to look for mine. Mine's a small town in Southern California, but not yet.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So why don't we start with you, Sina? So everyone, this is Sina.
Hi, everyone.
Tell us about, what do you do here at IDEO? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I have been at IDEO for 5 years as a systems designer. Nothing to do with computers. It's more about looking at the bigger picture and casting smaller frames and seeing how things are connected. As we've been designing products and services and experiences, one thing IDEO has come to learn is that everything is interconnected. And so when you design one thing, you actually have to think about the other things that are connected. So my background is actually in designing social movements. You know, it's crazy. There's no graphics, no drawing involved. But yeah, it's been a blast being here and seeing how design thinking really can influence people's lives, but also, from my perspective, organizations and even entire systems.
And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to have you today is a lot of you who sent in questions in advance. A lot of them were on the topic of organizations and culture and how do we bring design thinking into our organization.
Yes.
And Sina has a lot of experience in that. So
yeah,
we're sharing some of those stories. Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, so hi. I'm Colita Stafford, and I've been teaching and leading teams in the design thinking process since 2006 here at IDEO. So I'm a design director, and I now am a managing director of IDEO U. And so the whole reason we launched IDEO U is because people like you and I love to work in organizations, and we couldn't scale ourselves to go to every single place in the world. So we created IDEO U to help other organizations bring some of these innovative processes into their culture and their people. And so I teach the Insights for Innovation course, which is part of why I'm doing this webinar, because I want more of you to come join me in this course. It's happening April 12th. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of that, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Sounds great.
With the first question being, what is design thinking? So hold that thought for just a moment. So my background is all in insights and how you connect with the people for whom you're designing. So the Insights course, we teach 5 main lessons. So one is observing. How do you start to see what people need and unlock unmet needs and new opportunities for design? Interviewing, which is a major skill that there's a lot of techniques to how you can practice empathy. It's not just about interviewing someone to find out who they are, what need you're solving for, but to really empathize and connect with them. One of my favorites is taught by Jane Fulton Surrey. One of the favorite lessons is about immersive empathy and how you can quite literally shift your perspective to better understand what people need. And then of course there's sharing insights, how you synthesize and make sense of things to then inspire teams to create designs and get actionable. And then one technique that we use all the time is called extremes. So how do you can't interview everyone and connect with everyone, all of your customers. Some of the most valuable ones are at the edges. And so we teach that technique. But today, we're going to open up the conversation much more broadly around design thinking. So I'm going to start with a question that came in from Mira. And I hope some of you can see, we're going to post this on the screen. And design thinking. Quite frankly, I've been hearing the term design thinking a lot. I think I broadly get what it means, but don't know how this concept works. What are the principles of design thinking for non-designers? So I have a story. I'll start. One of my favorite blogs out there, it's a Tumblr blog, and it's called Design Effing Thinking. So what I love about it is it's a collection of kind of all of the different tools and frameworks of design thinking. And so if you're new to it, there's 3 things that all design thinking as a process has in common. What it is, it's a process for creative problem solving. The 3 qualities, there's a lot of different ways to practice it. The 3 qualities are always, there's some component of empathy and human-centeredness.
Right.
It's all about who you're designing at the center.
Yeah.
There's some process of ideation, practicing the skills of divergent thinking, getting past obvious solutions and exploring, a broader range. Then there's always some component of prototyping and experimenting as a way to move your ideas forward. So that's the core. I'm going to tell one story about what matters most to me over the years as we've taught it is the mindset. So what I mean by that, so we did a project with San Francisco Unified School District. Oh, nice. Thank you, Jessica. She put it up. Yes. Apologies for any language, but it is an interesting blog. It kind of shows the range of ways that design thinking shows up in the world. So we worked with San Francisco Unified School District, and they came to us with a challenge to improve the dining experience for all their students. There was 55,000 students, and we went through the process with them, and we as designers love to talk about kind of some of the ideas that came out of it, and here's the prototypes and ideas. Now they, as an organization, the thing they talk about most, and it's been several years now, is the mindset shift. So to them, they feel like now they have a new way to look at their problems. So kind of they're, as a heavily, like many organizations we work with, there's a lot of policy, there's a lot of stakeholders. And so for them, whenever there was a need or problem arose, their kind of mindset was always, let's survey the landscape, let's get all of the problems, let's identify all the problems, and then start to create action. And they would say now they have a different mindset where one of the ways that they create action is to just start prototyping. Use prototypes as a way to understand the needs and get people to be engaged in being part of the solution. So for them, their big takeaway is less about the actual steps and more about the mindset.
Yeah, that's really great. I think a lot of my lens comes from looking at organizations that are trying to make big changes. They've been trying to do something for a long time. It worked fairly well, but then they know there's a need for change. We work with a really big sports organization, and they were there to serve their players and their former players. And what happened was we used the same process, right? We went out and really got to know players and went into their homes. We had conversations with them. They didn't have their family members there, so they're able to open up in a way that they weren't ever able to do so in public, right? They're these public figures. And some of them cried. Some of them really opened up. And when we went back to our partner client, and we said to them, hey, what these guys really need is not more lawyers, not more services, not more privileges. They just need a little bit of love. They kind of, their mouths just dropped. They're like, these guys are tough players. Like, these are grown men, athletes, and they didn't leave us. So then we had to then take it to the next stage, which was, well, let's come up with a bunch of concepts that would show what we mean by this. And we did. We came up with everything from a clubhouse that would like make them feel still in a familiar environment to text messages that they would get. They give them tips, but in a very brotherly way, not a paternal way or a patronizing way. And then again, they still were doubtful. So then we said, well, let's prototype it with really small groups of people. And sure enough, when we did it, they saw it, and they created a whole branch within their organization that now, they call it the love machine, but of course they have a very, very formal title for it. Anyway, but that's an example of how an organization can change as well.
So what I took away from that story too is the core of design thinking and the kind of principles is getting actionable. So prototypes that and versions of your ideas that people can participate in and be influenced by, create momentum to create change. And even small steps.
In small steps.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to just continue diving into some general questions, and then we're going to open up to all of you. And I always love to hear what are big questions that you guys are wrestling with, even if it's not questions for us. Like, what's the question that's driving you on any given day? Like, I think that's the core of all good design thinking is knowing your questions.
That's right.
So like, do you have, what's one of your questions these days, Sina?
That's kind of occupying you.
That's occupying you.
One of the big ones is everyone, we work with a lot of people who know what design thinking is and the value of it, and they need to know their customers or their users, but they don't know how to scale that mindset within their organization. So this is what I'm obsessed with recently, and we're working with a big organization right now of 450,000 people. And how do you know, and they have like they have 100 people who know this, but they're like, how do we make everyone at least have awareness of this and that customers matter and that we should get that? So that's a big question that I'm trying to address is how do you start a movement within an organization?
We have some people today that would like to talk about that, so we can go there.
I look forward to.
Why don't we? And thank you for everyone. If you're just joining, be sure to find the chat bubble at the bottom so you can join the question stream. And we love to hear where you're calling in from or joining us from, and give us some of the big questions. What are things that you guys are thinking about? And then we will also open it up to just general questions around design thinking.
Welcome to all this coming in.
Yes. Oh, let's start. So we're going to start with this question from. This came from a few of you, both Reyes and James. A few experiential exercises. A few experiential exercises for teaching one of the 5 steps in design thinking. So there are many steps, but empathy, define, ideate, prototype, test are some common ones. Yeah, and there are some exercises. So guess what, guys? This is why we do all our courses. So all of our courses are about active activities. It's not unlike us today, talking heads. It is about active activities. So I'm going to give one from Insights for Innovation, and feel free to jump in as well. Sure. But one of the ones on our last webinar I love to do is it's a simple activity called What's in Your Bag? And it's a way to observe what people value. So I often get the question of how do you start a conversation with a stranger? And one of my favorite ways is either what's in your bag or show me your home screen on your phone. And what I look at when I look at someone's home, do you have your phone? With you?
I have my phone with me right now. Yes.
Christina and I have not done this. So wait.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So most kind of people with their business lens look at the apps you use.
Yes.
Which is important. So as a human designer, I'm going to look at what do you use as your background.
Interesting.
So what is your background? So
I can show that. Everyone, can you see this? You may recognize it, may not. It's
So tell me the story. So it was a beautiful photograph of a train station. Was it
going down a road? Yeah. And this is it was my first visit to Italy.
Yeah.
And I was there actually for an ideal project, and it was just this moment where the train was coming, and of course it was coming slowly, and it just meant the world to me. I felt invincible in that moment. So that's why I have it on my screen.
Why do you keep it on your?
Well, because it helps me. Like, so when I look at it, I remember there's this moment where I was doing something very meaningful. I was doing something in a very special place, and I don't know, somehow the train was like a force. So it kind of reminds me, like, keep going, keep moving on, you got this. So it's like a very enlivening experience for me.
So stepping up,
I
love that story. So stepping out of that, so I already, in one question, in one example, I've got a pulse on something you value.
Yeah.
So this idea of momentum, kind of feeling like I'm going to keep going is something you value. Now I have a whole kind of slew of topics I could talk to you about. And do you feel like I know you a little bit? Yeah,
I feel like you know something that probably most people don't know.
Right. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite activities. I would probably follow.
She's a Jedi. She just did that with me.
Anyone can do it. Yeah. So that's what I love a lot about design thinking is simple mindset shifts or just ways of asking questions differently. We have a lot of different exercises. In Ideas for Action, we give a lot of different tips for how you can. One of the things people struggle with in design thinking, or your org, is like, I want to make change happen, and it feels overwhelming. Like you said, what was the numbers you had? You have 100.
It's like 100 designers, but you have a 400,000 plus organization.
So how do you start? And one of the things we talk a lot about is rough and scrappy prototypes, just enough to start to create momentum. So we talk a lot about ways of doing that as well.
Yeah, and I think what I love about so I'm not part of IdeaU, but I've taught a couple of the courses or mentored it, is that we actually pull really tactical tools that don't require resources. You don't have to, I saw one of the questions was, how do you do this when you don't have resources and you don't have like money behind it? A lot of this is just what she just did. And I think even showing those kind of insights shows the value of design thinking right away to if it's your manager, it's a leadership, something that they probably wouldn't have gotten even if they launched a $2,000 survey or something like that.
Yep. So we'll keep moving on. Thank you guys. I'd love to see, lots of questions coming in. Keep them coming. Should we move on to another question? I might keep us moving.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Skills and frameworks. This is you think in frameworks too.
Yeah, but please, I know we both talk about frameworks.
This is from Francis. Sorry, I can't see the name. One of the questions, what are some good ways to gain skills in using frameworks for generating insights and defining problems? Not many people ask about this one, but I love this. Frameworks, to me, I see the world like 80% of the world and all its phenomenon can be divided up and can be captured in 3 main frameworks. So 3 that we use all the time.
I love it.
2 by 2.
2 by 2.
2 by 2. So all about understanding different tensions in whatever phenomenon you're trying to understand. This is too small to see. 2 by 2. The classic Venn. Where are things alike? Where are things overlapping? Where are things converging? And the journey.
Yes.
But what I love is, so it's less of, so yes, these are kind of my go-to framework tools, and kind of all phenomenon. But what's most important is, what do you do with the framework? What does it have to do? So a good framework to me does 3 things in design thinking. I'm going to use this one, 2 by 2. I think of it as a story canvas. So all it is a vehicle for storytelling. And we talk a lot about design thinking is storytelling. I love to talk about my courses. So one of them is storytelling for influence and how do you get people involved. So I'm going to tell the story of, years back, we were working for a video game company that had all their kind of core customers in hardcore console gamers. And they were trying to understand, with the emergence of all of the iOS systems and social gaming and the Wii, like how do we understand the broader landscape of players? And so we did a 2 by 2 that was very, as you'd expect, it's kind of solo to social, where people playing alone versus together, and then deep engagement versus light, like the kind of popcorn engagement. And so a good framework does 3 things. First, it captures the current state phenomenon. So in that framework, we would tell stories. Like, here's the story of one of my favorite moments was what we called the wind-up moment. So this is when college students or young singles, they'll get together at someone's house and play quick games as a way to just kind of up the energy before they go out for the night. So there's this mode. So we would anchor all these different stories. So that's one thing. The framework tells the stories of the current state. From there too, then you can start to synthesize it out to be, what are the needs in each of these quadrants? What are the mindsets and needs of people who are in a kind of a social light mindset? They're looking to make conversation versus someone who's in a different. So we can talk about, then as designers, you think about, well, here's the needs that we can design to. That's the second thing. It kind of paints a picture of what the opportunities are. Then the third thing that a framework does well is you can start to anchor on your designs and offers. So that same framework is then where we would talk about, so here's where your current offers sit. Here's how you might kind of expand your brand and offers. And all frameworks do this. They capture phenomenon, their story canvas.
Storytelling,
And I know one of my favorite ones that I know you've been a part of is the kind of social movements. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you thought about that?
I think you hit it. Those 3 there's some version of those 3 that always play out. And I think one of the challenges we had was we had a big personality come to us and say, hey, I have all these resources and I want to make a difference in education. Can we actually create a movement? And so my background has been in analyzing past movements, but we thought about, can we design movements? And really we follow the same process, which is people are going to be at different stages of development, and what do they need at those different stages? And so it's a journey map. It's a bit sophisticated. It looks very fancy, but it really is. Hey, at the beginning, there's an igniting phase that goes on. So there's a different physics to lighting a fire versus then starting to fuel the fire and then finally fanning the fire. And so we carry that journey onward, and we said, and then that becomes a loop cycle. And so again, I think these tools are there to simplify, not complexify. And I think one thing that people have confused is they think that smart means complexity. And I think I always go back to Einstein. He had a quote where he said, I'm not smarter than everyone else. I just stay with the problem longer. And I think the ability of being able to stay with the problem and embrace ambiguity and then simplify the message, not the problem, but the message of that is really important. Yeah. So storytelling is a big one in that.
Yeah. Renee's question, can you repeat the 3 frameworks?
Yes.
The 2x2, which is just straight up 2x2, and it usually anchors 2 tensions that you see in whatever kind of phenomenon you're trying to understand or design for. The Venn, so the 3 or 4 circles where you see the overlapping kind of need states, and then the journey, which is where there's something around kind of moments. There's different moments in a cycle that usually loops back in different ways. Yeah, that's right. Yep. I'm going to keep moving on and I know there's more questions coming in.
Thanks, Francesca, for that question.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to? Let's go to the next one. We're going to do 4 more, and then open it up to some of your questions too.
So keep them coming.
Yeah, keep them coming. Getting down to business.
Yes.
How do you handle business KPIs within design thinking?
So for those, I'm sure everyone knows this, but for those who don't, KPI stands for key performance indices or indexes, or it's a way of actually measuring what you're doing. And I think a lot of companies, they set these goals up because they want to know, hey, are we putting an investment into something, and are we going to get our investment back? This is really important for anyone in your time. If you go out to a party, you're thinking, hey, how much of a benefit is this party going to bring me? Is it going to increase my joy? Is it going to bring me closer to people? Because you're already automatically doing that at a constant level. So I think when we think about design thinking, the first word that comes to mind is human. So this idea of what's the humanity of those KPI measures that your company has. So if it's like reach more customers by the end of the year or increase sales, what would be that's a business need. What is the human need behind that? Which is, are we offering things that customers want? And is there a way to measure that? And I think there's a very quantitative way of doing that. There's this thing called Net Promoter Score, which is, would you recommend, you use the iPhone, would you recommend it to a friend? Yes, I would. Okay, that's measuring her desirability of it. She's like, yeah, I like it so much, I'm going to tell my friend about it. And if I can actually just frame it that way, it's very useful. On the other hand, you might actually start to think about ways of measuring experimentation and prototyping, things that companies don't usually do. So, hey, our goal for this year is, yes, we have a lot of work that we really need to keep really operationally tight because our revenue is banking on it, but can we diversify our portfolio and have maybe 5% or 10% of our efforts go into something that we are learning something new? So maybe the KPI is, how many insights are we generating a year that we didn't know before? Or how many prototypes are we putting out in a year so we can try out what might be the next big thing? So this is a way of actually balancing those two. So the first one is reframing the business need as a human need, and you're just kind of giving it context. The second one is kind of framing your design thinking approach to things, whether that's generating ideas or prototyping or getting insights, and then making those KPIs. Put a number to it. It's okay. I think the point is you're building a muscle, and so when you're working out, 10 is an arbitrary number for push-ups, but the goal is set. And I think for some people, that is really important to them. I think it's important to know if you're making progress myself, and that's a way to communicate it.
Yeah. The key place I see it too is it's often in the prototyping phase, and your efforts in design thinking can actually drive the KPIs that you as a business and organization want to have on the radar. So for example, you touch on this within healthcare, patient satisfaction is actually a really key performance indicator. So anytime you develop a prototype that is meant to touch on the patient experience, that would be one of the measurements you'd want in that. So whenever we prototype, we think about learn, measure, build. One of the things in Tim Brown's, in our course on Leading for Creativity, we have one of the things that people do is design a ritual to nudge their culture. And one of the things that you do with that is what would be the measures that you would be looking for, that your culture is doing the things you hope to be seeing more of in your organization. I want to give one example of where a common thing that organizations struggle with when it comes to KPIs and design thinking. So we were working with a major international manufacturing company. They are a legacy company. They've been around for decades. They are Six Sigma, black belts. All of their processes are very streamlined, and they have a high degree of accuracy and quality. I mean, and they're heavily regulation driven. So yet they feel they are being disrupted right and left. So there are new competitors coming on the market, different business models impacting their business. They know that they need to be able to pivot and be more agile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so they started bringing in more innovation processes. They want more people in the organization to embrace failure and experimentation so that they can start to break through some of their. The problem is all of their structures, all of their incentives are adverse to this. So every employee is measured by, by impact of sales or efficiency or these measurements of what has been measured in the past. So their leadership team is in the process of reassessing what do we as a culture value. They want people to fail and take risks, but there's nothing in their culture that allows that supports that. So they're now kind of assessing. So design thinking does often turn a lens on an organization to assess all of their kind of internal values and all the structures by which they aren't truly supporting those behaviors.
And I when you said that, you made me think of, let me give a quick story of, there was a food chain company that came to, not in the United States, in Latin America, and they wanted, like many entry-level jobs, they wanted to know how do they increase retention of their employees, right? They were leaving in 6 months, leaving in less than 6 months, and that was a business need, right? That was, hey, can we increase the number of retention by 5%? And really, what design thinking does is think of that, and they say, okay, we want to get to that, but what's not the kind of analytical business way of getting there, but if I can actually address a human need somewhere in there, the outcome of that might be retention. So in this case, it was, how might we improve employee satisfaction or employee experience? And by doing so, we would get to the retention. And we did have KPIs. We said, you're losing $100 million a year because you're not actually investing in the employee's experience because the hiring process itself was so costly. So we were able to marry both of those languages of their need to satisfy quantitative measures with the human experience.
So there's some great questions coming in. So we'll go quickly. I want to definitely do a culture one since we're on that topic, and then maybe we can start to switch to some of the ones you were coming in, because I see some great ones coming in. Justin and Bill and Joseph and Alexandra. Thank you guys. Let's talk about this one. You just touched on it. How do you create a culture of innovation within an organization? And Anna, I know this comes from, hello to the crew out in Costa Rica. I think there's a bunch of you watching today. How could you use design thinking processes to design a culture that shows our values? Respect, passion, service, reliability, and innovation. I know you're gonna have stories. I'm gonna start with one mindset, as I know you have a wealth of stories. One of the things, and somebody else brought it up in the question chain too, is like, what does design thinking have to do with full culture and systems? So historically, design thinking kind of began with this idea of products. How do you understand consumers to design better products? And over time, we've seen, wow, this process expands to touch more things, and it started to evolve to touch services, which people could still see. They're like, oh, I get it. You can understand customer needs and prototype different service models. My favorite thing is we see design thinking spanning out to touch, like you said, systems. It's a mindset, this process that can apply to big, gnarly problems. I hear people talking about using design thinking to prototype business models. We think about it, you can prototype stories. You can apply this to increasingly larger spheres of problems, far beyond products. And so I love all of you who are wrestling with and thinking about how do you use design intentionally to shift whole systems, whole organizations and cultures. And you can do that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will come back to the second question. I think those are actually two really smart questions, different in both regards. When you talk about creating a culture of innovation, I read that as a culture that's actually comfortable or embraces ambiguity, embraces experimentation, embraces learning, and has some tolerance for failure. I think, but for both of them, I want to really drive this point because I'm seeing some of the other questions come in. All your companies or organizations are at different levels and they have different orientations. I think meeting them, just like people, you want to meet them where they are. So if they are a risk-adverse culture, going in there with guns blazing isn't probably going to get the results that you want. So it's empathizing with what is their fear, what is their aversion to risk or to innovation. Is it threatening the bottom line? A lot of times banks and financial institutions or governments that work with us, they're like, we would love to innovate, but we have all these regulatory constraints. We have all these people that we're obliged to serve. And I'm thinking of, there's different approaches to doing this. So one big organization, a financial institution that we work with, came to us and said, look, we really want to become more innovative. We realize that, there's this great quote, the days of the big fish eating the small fish are over. It's the fast fish eating the slow fish, right? And so being adaptive is so important. How do we do that while being risk adverse? And I think their approach was, can we just start building this mindset throughout the organization before we actually ask for a big behavior change? So we created a very customized course. We created an information campaign that showed key hero projects. So just a few projects that we then storyified. We created big stories around them to show that, hey, design thinking can bring, or innovation can bring value to your organization, and it's safe, and it doesn't mean it costs a lot of money, and it doesn't take a lot. And then, on the other hand, we had another organization who said, no, we want to just build fast and quickly. And so we said, well, again, we think this approach of creating a model of proof points is really important. And so what we did with them was we outlined a pipeline of work that was relevant to them. So what was the problem that they had been it was gnarly, that they had been trying to solve for a long time, and then we applied design thinking to it. And if we can prove that, they're going to have this bigger explosive effect of like, wow, I guess there's something to this thing.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I think it's really interesting. I think this one to me depends on the size of your organization. Yeah. If you're a startup, I think startups are very unique because they're in go mode. But there's a point, we worked with a couple of startups here that I've worked with, that they were at that point of becoming 50 to 250. And for them, it was a moment where they needed to codify, like, hey, we're afraid we're going to lose our
culture, our ethos.
Yeah, our ethos, what makes us, and this and that. We're becoming structuralized. I can't talk to the CEO anymore. And so really, again, design thinking is a very powerful but simple process of, well, go back to those people and talk to them. Like, what are your values? Like, have them verbalize it. Don't sit in the office and just come up with a chalkboard and wordsmith something. Have people tell stories about it. And so we had these boards where we kind of clustered these values together, and then they would have little short stories that they would write about that. And that was a nice way for the ground up to come and become codified. Yeah.
So I'm going to build on that too, because I see Bill even just asked us, how do you introduce design thinking into an organization that's change adverse?
Yes.
So we see, I love thinking about it from both approaches. So one is grassroots up, where you find the passionate few and you find ways for them to participate in designing the values and kind of creating ownership in those values. Yeah. Another one of my favorite stories was a global healthcare organization, kind of the upper management was like, we want to be more agile. We want to bring in more design thinking innovation, but same as financial, there's significant regulations and protocols that need to be in place. And it feels strange to say, well, how can healthcare innovate when there's so many protocols that have to be followed? So one of the things when they came to us was they realized they weren't actually ready. And we kind of said the same thing too, like you aren't ready for this. And they spent a year, their leadership team having multiple conversations and reflections as an organization, how ready are we really to go on this journey? And I think there is something to be said about finding the right collaborators and the right temperature by which a culture is ready. So you can approach it at both ends. Gather those collaborators who can influence. Yes. You can also, within whatever small team you work within, you can do prototypes and express ideas that create momentum, that show people how things can be done differently. And we believe both can happen. I'm going to take a personal moment too of one of the things we're looking for more, we're planning to do more courses at IDU, and one of the ones that keeps coming up is organizations. How do you create change in organizations? Yeah. I'd love to hear from all of you out there too. What are the kind of skills and lessons and insights that you're looking for more of in the world. Because we always like to just learn and hear from people. What is it that you're looking to learn and be able to do more of? So I'd love to hear about that. And with that, let's switch to the audience questions.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I'd love, again, please continue to ask questions on the thread. And like I said, I want to hear what are some other lessons and skills that each of you are looking for more of in the world, because we're looking to figure out more courses that we want to create. Yeah.
That's great. So this is
let's see.
From Lori Bell.
All right.
How do you apply design thinking to a service such as training as opposed to a product? This is a very common question that we get.
This one.
I mean, I think in the last 15 years, we really have shifted a lot of our work to this exact thing, because products very tangible. It's a thing that you can make and it drops and makes a sound. But services like training, or even things in terms of like cultural, like organizational change, how do you experiment with them? And I think one thing that we were working with a big media firm that was going through a radical change, and they said, well, we need to think about how we're organizing ourselves. Part of our organization is in New York, part of our organization is in LA, and how do we even work to do this? Like, how do we work together differently? And so one of the things is, if you can create constraints around experiments, say, for example, for 6 weeks, we're going to try this special type of team, and they're going to be bunkered from the everyday norms of things, because we're trying to learn from it. Therefore, the expectation isn't that those people will fail. It's whatever the outcome is a learning, and we're trying to kind of figure out a better way of doing that.
Yeah.
Keeping groups small and keeping it like really like the risk level is low is super important for that, including a training program.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, because even you guys prototype with this training program, you know, like we did our own dog food, right?
We do all the time, and we fail often. Yes, I was gonna build on your story actually with again, this is a healthcare example, but one of the ways to do service prototypes where you're asking people to engage in new behaviors is one of my favorite organizations. They have thousands of people worldwide, and so they don't come to, so in each location, they don't come to that location with the solution, like, here's how you should be doing this instead. They come to that location with, you know, we have these problems. We see in this part of our process, these problems, this and this and this. And inevitably, that location's like, we feel that too.
Yeah.
So they bring people together around the problem. So they get this shared vision of, we feel that pain too. And then they introduce kind of like a straw man version of the service, or the different way of doing the service, that then they ask the location to, you know, given that we have these shared problems, here's kind of some starting ways we can maybe do it differently. How might you adapt this for your location?
Wow. And
so I love thinking about so much about service prototypes where you engage, you're asking people to try out new behaviors is unifying around the problem and feeling that same problem. And from there, everybody wants to participate.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many ways. I think prototyping services is almost, in some ways, better returns on a product, because it can do really quickly, and you can figure out right in context. I know there was an example of a teller service. So there was these employees, and they had customer experiences with them, and they were trying to improve that. And what we were able to do is we were able to try things in context with really low fidelity products, low fidelity setup, everything from adding a seat at the teller's where it's teller stand instead of them standing, and really learning right there. So I think just think of it as, what are we trying to learn? I think that's the driving question. And then what can we do to try to learn about that? Yeah.
There's so many questions. We're not going to get to them all.
We're all reading these questions.
I love people thinking. I love too that a lot of you are sharing some different resources. Like I see Gabriella, Daniel Pink's book. I love.
Daniel
All
Pink's book
is great. So this is a great forum for all of you. There's only so much Sina and I can provide, but you guys are a wealth of information to each other too. I love any of you who are coming across resources and things that are inspiring you. I think this is a great forum to share them. Please continue to do that. Let's go to, I'm gonna go to Deepak. This came in earlier in the session. How do I ensure I am not designing for a niche need? On the other hand, not get paralyzed with market research. So, I love this one. Because that is reality. Of course, your market research is a critical part of your organization, and it does tell you a lot about your customers. How do I ensure I'm not designing for a niche need? This is where I love to pair market research with generative research. So the way we think about it in our Insights for Innovation course is there's I think of 3 different types of research. Generative research, which is very much about identifying new opportunities and exploring what the needs are. Evaluative research, which is very much as part of the prototyping phase, which is where you're gathering feedback and iterating your way forward. And then validation research, which is often market research, where it's understanding what is currently happening in the market. Versus the other 2 are ways to understand the future. You can't yet measure what has yet to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think for anyone, I think it's important to have all 3 of those in your as part of your kind of arsenal of tools.
That's really neat.
So if you are heavily in the market research side, I love one of the lessons I talked about in our Insights course is this idea of extremes. Go out, spend time with consumers and people who are representing the edge use cases of your product. So from that, you will start to identify areas where you might not be thinking, opportunities you might not be thinking about. You can always pair that with your core consumer. And I often find they actually have an important relationship. So that's all I'm going to say on that for now, but there's a lot we could go
Don't get paralyzed with market. You're never going to know everything.
Right.
And sometimes you will start to average things out. And there's a great book called End of Average, which this guy goes in and he says that the notion of average is actually bogus. It comes from science, but when applied to humans, you're actually creating a false human, and then you're designing for that false human. So it says in many ways, people are jagged and they're on these peripheries. So you actually will probably get closer to designing for the masses by designing for a real person than the average person. So that's why, as a side note, it doesn't mean that it's not useful, but I am glad that you're thinking of it as don't get paralyzed. And if you find that you are, move towards action.
So we have time for one more. Thank you all of you for joining us. We will be recording this session. It will be available. We have definitely time for one more question. And yes, everybody keep sharing your favorite resources.
Yeah, and you guys, if you have answers for each other, I think it's fair. I think some of you guys have been doing this. I know that some of you are design thinkers and you're sharing. And
I learned stuff.
I know. I'm not getting a transcript of this interview. And before we answer that last question, I just want to say one thing, that change is hard. It's beautiful, but it's hard. And so while this process is very simple and clear and effective, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to, and I see some questions about skeptics and things like this, and trust us, for a company that's been here for 30 years, we did it, and they hire us, they pay us money to do this, we still sometimes have skeptical clients. They paid us, and they're still skeptical. So don't feel like you're not doing it right or that it's their problem. I think people are just complicated. And I think the one suggestion I have overall is figure out what are those barriers for them that make them feel fearful. It's probably that they don't know, that they feel that they're threatened in some way. Don't think of it as a bad thing. Kind of do your investigation, figure out what are those barriers to that process of getting them receptive, and then maybe introduce it. So that's just to throw out some of the questions I saw. I think it was Molly that mentioned that a couple of times.
I have to say, Hannah, I can't stop. We will go to our last question, but I love this. Hannah too. She said, what language or actions do you use when you get skeptics? Based on what you just said too. One of my favorites was, again, with the school district. We were in the feedback stage of different prototypes, and instead of framing the session, it ended up going around with about 200 different stakeholders. Instead of calling them feedback sessions, we called it Make It Awesome sessions. So that simple terminology was communicated. We don't have the answers. We have some starting points. What would you do to make this work in your location? And so just simple language can completely shift the way that people participate in the process.
I agree.
So this is one that you all gonna have to join in on. Pollyanna or Panacea, are there any problems that cannot be solved by design? This comes from James.
This is such a good question.
I'm gonna ask this to all of you. What do you guys think? Yes or no? Can any problem be solved by design? And I'm just curious what people think overall. Flood it in, people. What do you think?
Yes.
Oh.
Very optimistic. This is a good trait.
This is a good trait.
Doesn't mean it depends. I like
Yeah,
it.
fair. So what do you think, Sina?
So you know what's interesting? This hits very close to home because I've been doing this for a while. When I was in Rome, I went to give a workshop on design thinking to journalists, designers, and activists on how do you address the migration crisis happening right now and the refugee crisis happening. And as we were doing these exercises and we went through the process and things like this, I was like, well, why am I not involved in this? So I actually had a friend who was in Greece, and I went to, and I was like, let me apply design thinking. I went to one of these camps. It was in Greece to see what could design do. And there's a famous quote by a designer, Charles Eames, that says, someone asked him, are there limits to design? And he said, are there limits to problems? And that was his counter question. And I was putting this to test. And very sobering was, it is overwhelming when you're dealing with a systemic challenge of such proportions that like it feels like 100 things need to get solved for it to play out. That's one perspective. And my friend who was with me had that perspective, and she was really overwhelmed by it, but very optimistic. And I think the other approach, or the other way of thinking of it is, what are the small things that you can do to improve the system? And I think, I don't think there's ever a silver bullet, right? That's why we live in the world we live in. It's very complex, very messy. We have no right answers. Even if we do have the right answers, we sometimes don't do those right answers. So I think, for me, I think the answer is, what part of this do I want to solve? Or what part of this can I take on? And different people have different resources, different people have different capacities. And I think the point is, like, you're committed to it and you're willing to throw stuff at it.
Yeah. So I'll agree with all those things. And I love the optimism in this group too. And and the realism. It's both. It does depend. I'm gonna give you my favorite tool, without a doubt, in design research is, whenever we're faced with a problem, our instinct is always, well, I should come up with an answer. I should have an answer. The best tool for anybody in any problem is what we call the gift of the question. So whenever I'm faced with a problem, instead of the mindset of, okay, I have to solve this, I shift to think of, okay, what is the question I can ask that might move us forward a little bit or help me understand it more? So that is the one single tool that I find applicable to every situation that will inevitably keep you moving forward in small ways that can lead to big ways. So
I agree. And I don't think, I know some of the questions you realize, I don't think design thinking is at odds with analytical thinking. I think it's like saying, do you like the sun better than you like the earth? I think as a human, I need both to survive. So I think we're always switching modes. And I think, I love the way you said it. It's just an approach to get more understanding of something. And so if you're getting closer to it, you're in good shape. I think when you get stuck, then use something else. Then use another tool. It's just a tool, right? And so thank you guys for letting us participate in this with you guys.
We had a great day. I hope you leave feeling inspired and equipped to start to try out some things. I hope you all take one thing from this conversation and try it out. And I'll say this, and I don't have any invested interest in this, but the courses, if you find a course that you like and want to try out, someone asked, would you do the design thinking one or the storytelling one first? I feel like you're going to get something from either one of them. I will say this, I've conducted several in-person workshops for companies. We do that very rarely. In fact, we're doing that less and less and less. And so there's a lot of options out there. Whether you do IDEO or something else, fine. But I haven't found, I think because IDEOers are the ones designing this course, it's not just a pedagogical, theoretical thing. There's a lot of that practical tools that zooms in, this is what you need to know to have bigger impact. So I don't know, but if you guys are in a course, congratulations. If you're not, think about it. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool opportunity. Yeah, thank you. We do. We love learning from all of you guys too. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.